Hi, and welcome to the Art of Value Whispering podcast. I'm Melitta Campbell, your host, and I can't quite believe I'm about to say this, but welcome to the 200th episode of the show. It's quite surreal to think that this show has been running for 4 years and to look back on just how many people I've interviewed, how much I've learned and grown through this process, and just how many wonderful messages I've had from you, the listeners, and the community that we've built together. So thank you for being here with me. And I hope you enjoy this episode because it's going to be a little bit different. I've handed over host to my good friend, Monica Antohi, who is an entrepreneur herself. She is a journalist. She's the founder and editor-in-chief of the business magazine for women, and she's the founder of Sustainability Media. So I thought, who better to hand over to? And she is in fact going to interview me on this episode. And as she reveals right at the very beginning, her mission is to find out who is the real Melitta Campbell behind the show, behind the business coaching, behind the books. So I hope you enjoy her interview and what she discovers in that process. And if you have other questions, and I would love to know how you find this episode, come and share your thoughts with me over in the community, the Dream Clients Club. You'll find us at melittacampbell.com/club. And there you will find lots of free training, tools, resources to support you. Plus, you'll have the opportunity to share your thoughts on this episode and any further questions you have for me. And I may well turn those into a follow-up episode to this podcast as well. So keep an eye out there. You'll find us again at melittacampbell.com/club. Meantime, enjoy this 200th episode. Hi, and welcome to the Art of Value Whispering podcast. I'm your usual host, Melitta Campbell, but as this is the 200th episode of the show, I have invited my very good friend, Monica, to interview me. Monica is an incredible journalist. She has an amazing magazine for women, and I thought, who best to take over the show and interview me than Monica? So I will hand over. I have no idea what's going to happen next.
Well, hello, Melitta's following, which is quite significant, by the way. And thank you for allowing me to do this, because I've been thinking about how to ask all of these questions in our interactions, and thank God we live kind of close, but it's a good thing that I can ask these questions in a public manner, because I think that your audience knows one side of you. They know the professional side. They know the Melitta that's behind a shy girl's guide to networking, and behind the TED Talks, and behind the coaching. But do they know who Melitta is? What the influence behind Melitta's life? How did you get here? So I want to talk about that. Let's start with introducing you to your audience, because they know you in a way, but let's give them a different kind of perspective. So who is Melitta behind the TED Talks and the books, one and the second one coming, the coaching, the marketing, the communications, all of that? How did you get to be Melitta Campbell?
That's always such a hard question to ask, because you just think, well, I'm just me.
Yeah.
I remember being on a podcast and it was all about what's your story. And I'd listened to a few episodes of the podcast before I was on the show. And there was all these people with these like massive transformations, or they'd done like these incredible things. And I thought, oh, I'm just me. And then I thought, oh, well, maybe that's my story. I'm not necessarily someone who has been broke and lived on couches, all of that, but I'm just someone who had a career, loved my job, but then I had kids and I couldn't work my job and have kids because that option just wasn't here for me here in Switzerland, because living abroad, you don't have the support network. There isn't the childcare system that there should be here, unfortunately. And this was back 15 years ago, but sadly, it's not much better today. So I didn't have that option to continue with my career. And so I started a business, because I'm not very good at just not doing anything.
But I don't think this is the first time you were not doing anything. I want to go all the way back to your first job, to the initial step, which was entrepreneurial. So how did that come about? How old were you? Because
I was 21.
13 or...
Oh my, yeah. Okay.
I think it's important there's so much of that in all that you do. And it's such a valuable lesson that I know you were exposed to, with that experience, that it impressed me. So now I think they're going to want to hear it too.
Yeah, so I've always worked. I've always liked to be independent and have some money. So I started with a paper round. That was a nightmare because it was a free paper. So it was so heavy and it was like half a penny a paper. So I worked all day and I worked out I got like £1, which even back then, which is a long time ago, that really wasn't much money. So that didn't last very long. And then I loved horses and I loved drawing. And so I used to run colouring competitions and drawing competitions in a pony magazine. And I raised, I think it was about £500 for charity for a donkey sanctuary. And I just asked people to pay to enter. And then I judged them myself in my bedroom. And I sent them back. The ones that won, I sent them a rosette. And they could pay extra if they wanted me to send their picture back to them. So I sent the ones back that asked for that. And yeah, looking back at it, I was like, gosh, the audacity of just like, I'm going to run colouring competitions in a magazine and just did it. And it worked and people entered. And I think that was a case of being in the right place, asking the right audience to do the right thing. And people like, people like me that were reading the magazine that loved horses, loved drawing. It was the perfect thing for them to do. The only thing I was upset about is that I couldn't enter because I love drawing.
You cannot win in your own contest. Sorry, it doesn't quite work. I mean, sometimes, but the thing there is that you were doing something that you loved. And, a lot of people know you as the shy girl, right? Like behind all of this, right? But there was no shyness in that. You just did something that you were loving. You were involved in something that you were loving to do, and the drawing and the horses, and it was easy.
Yeah. And I think having had a lot of conversations now with other introverts, it's not that we are, well, in some cases I'm shy, but so we're extroverts. So shyness isn't introversion, but introverts, they only want to speak up when they know they're being of value. And when they have this clear vision, I want to make this happen, then it's no problem to do anything. And because we tend to think things through, then when you go and do it, you have that whole plan and it all comes together and it feels very straightforward. So in that case, it felt like, oh, I'll just do it. And it all felt very straightforward. So yeah, and then I had my second company when I was 15.
Yeah.
Again, doing what I loved, which was chocolate.
Great. I think we're in the right country for that as well, too. Like, now, but
yeah. So I started a company. It was part of the Young Enterprise Scheme in Wales at the time, and we won the prize for the most profitable business because right from the beginning.
At 15.
At 15, yeah.
At 15.
We all got, I think we earned £100 each, and we're like, yeah,
it's a big deal.
Yeah, so it was about £500. So there's five of us doing it, and yeah, we just sold sweets and chocolate at school at break times, and so it was a lot of fun. But we had to go to the cash and carry, and we had to think about, well, what we can sell, and what's the balance of products, and what are the margins, and.
At 15, I keep stressing that because it's an important point. You kind of understood the market at 15, how it works, financial, money that comes in, money that goes out. So,
yeah, I don't know. We didn't really think too much about it, but it just seemed obvious that, we can't just sell all like cheap stuff. We have to think, what's the margins here and what are we going to sell? And we only had a certain amount of budget. The other thing we did, and this is why we're the most profitable business, is that they recommended that you had shareholders. So people, like usually your family, would give you money. They'd invest in you. You would make money, and then you'd share out the profit.
Right.
And we were thinking, well, you don't want to share the profit.
Yeah.
So we decided, well, let's get sponsors. So
good idea. Investors at that age. Okay, great. Even better sponsors.
So we got 3 sponsors, and we had on our poster that said we sell chocolate. It said sponsored by, and it was basically our dads. And so we didn't have to pay anyone back. We just kept all the money.
What kind of influence do you need to have the confidence to start something like that? Because, running the contest on the horse magazine and the running your own chocolate company, and these are just the beginnings of Melitta. What happened? How did you get there? What were the pivotal points that made you say, yeah, I can do that. It's okay. This is something that I can do. There seems to be like no doubt in your mind that, and you just kind of went and did it.
Yeah, I think it was just ignorance. Why wouldn't this work?
Yeah.
I like drawing. I like chocolate. Why would this not work for other people like me? And I think a lot of us go into business to help our older selves, or, as a few months ago, or as a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And a lot of my clients are in that bracket. They're service-based business owners. They want to help other people, but the people they're helping are because they realized that support wasn't there for them. So the drawing competition, I wanted to draw, and there was no competitions for me. So that seemed obvious. There was a gap. I wanted to eat chocolate at break time, and there was no way to buy it at school. So that was an obvious gap. I don't think I thought too much about it. But yeah, if I was to read back into it, I think it was just well, why wouldn't it work? I would love this, and my market is me. So let's just do it. And yeah, it worked.
And that's just the beginning. And then high school and college. And what pulled you forward? What were your interests? And because it's brought you to Melitta Campbell today, which is beyond a coach, from personal experience. There's a way in which you see things and in which you frame things that it's not just, it doesn't come from coaching, comes from life experience in multiple environments. So which of those environments pulled you forward, and how was that progression for you? What were some of the steps that you think that there might have been kind of, this was something that, pushed me in that direction?
I think it was, so my interests were, I loved business, and I did business studies at school, starting at age, I think 14 or something, and absolutely loved it. But then I did economics at A levels. I loved economics, and I wanted to do that at university. But at university, it's all maths, and I can't read numbers. I'm dyscalculic, and I'm rubbish at maths. And so that wasn't really going to be an option. The other thing I love to do, as I've mentioned already, is drawing. I loved art, and I did art, GCSE and A levels, but again, I didn't want to do that at university. I thought, well, I don't want to be an artist. I love art, and so then I just felt really stuck. So, well, what do I do next? I don't want to be an artist, and I can't do economics. What do I do? And anyone who's into manifestation and the universe, that I feel like I've manifested some incredible opportunities throughout my life. But I received a letter through the post. I was applying for teacher training, hospitality school, anything. I was like, well, that'll do. Nothing I was really excited about. Then I received this letter in the post from a lady saying, we are starting a new course called Design Management. Would you like to apply? And I was like, yes, please.
That sounds quite interesting.
It was
Tell me
perfect.
more.
Yeah. So I applied. She sent letters out to, I think it was 500 people. There were 30 places. Wow. And I drove up for the interview, and I remember I was so quiet and shy. I thought, I'm never going to get this. But I did. I got the place. And I think she must have seen, me,
yes.
and
she must have seen you.
Yeah, and the fact that I love art and design, but that's not what I wanted to do. I love business and leadership and marketing, but I couldn't find a route forward that would suit me. And I think she was like, yeah, this is, if I was her now, I would probably be thinking, this is the person I've designed this course for. But at the time, you're always thinking, oh, I'm not good enough. But anyway, I got the place. And the very first day, she noticed, obviously, that I was very shy. And she put me on the door and had me write everybody's name. So everyone that came in had to say hello to me and get their name badge. And what I'd done the same thing for myself just before that. If anyone's read my book, you'll know when I went to university, I had a shared room because my mum was like, you're so shy. You have to have a shared room, otherwise you'll never leave your room and you'll just
you never do anything social. Yeah.
So I had the shared room, but then my roommate didn't show up. So I was on my own, and I was just sitting there. I was thinking, I'm going to be sat here the whole way through the next 3 years if I don't do something. So I thought, right, now's my opportunity, but before anyone else knows anyone else. So I knocked on every single door in the halls. That was about, I think, 70 odd people. My hand got really sore. So thankfully, some people were like, oh, I'll come and help you. So thank you. So, me and a tribe of people in the end just knocked on everyone's door. And said, there's a common room at the end of the corridor. Let's all meet there at 6:00. I noticed there's a off license down the road. Bring booze. And that was it. But then when they came,
instant social life.
Yeah. But the only person everybody knew was me. So I didn't have to do the awkward introduction. And then people were saying, oh, who's that person? I was like, oh, and they would tell me something. It's like, oh, did you meet so-and-so? They're from there. Because I'd kind of had that introduction. And then the course director, she did the same thing for the course. Like, you write the badges. And I thought that was really interesting. It's like, oh, I just learned that lesson and she's teaching me it here. So that's kind of always been my shortcut in networking, is be the person that gives out the badges, or better still, speak on stage. Then you don't have to introduce yourself because you already have, and everyone comes to you. That's my networking hack.
And here's the thing, it's so easy if you think about it, but it takes a bit of guts to do that, and it takes somebody to guide you. Okay, you're gonna write the names at the beginning. You're going to give out the name badges. It's a little bit of that push forward that sometimes helps.
Yeah.
But you knocking on anybody's door, that was on you. You did that. There was nobody pushing you into that, even though you kind of were hearing a mom, you cannot be in the room for 3 years graduation. You cannot be here. But so I understand now how you're networking, because I see you in a room and it's flawless, but it's also effortless. It seems natural and so I understand now. It makes sense now in retrospect. So
I think it's like everything. It feels natural and easy now. But
yes, but
there's been a big journey to get there. And also, there's certain networks, certain people anyway. And if I was going somewhere completely new, now if I was to go to America, for example, and start networking there, it's a whole new culture. So that would feel very different. I think that might be, but then
we're very open, don't worry.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would lean on my British accent there.
Everybody's like, oh, yeah, British. Yes.
Yeah, I'll have to tell you a funny story about California and my Welsh accent, but anyway.
Next 300th episode, we'll talk about that. All right, so we're getting the starting of the making of Melitta. But you got into business, and there were things about first job, second job that were pretty big. From we had a chance to talk a bit about this before, and they kind of stuck with me. It'd be nice to give the audience the big points in how did you end up actually here, besides the fact that it's not that easy to have a full-time job in Switzerland with children. So besides that, you had a very nice growth in the corporate world, but it was natural, and it was something that you were kind of easily navigating, kind of going up your way, which is rare. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. With hindsight, it looks natural and smooth.
Right.
In the moment, it never necessarily felt that way. But I think that degree that I did in design management really helped me have a different focus, because we were learning. So design management is like translating a corporate strategic project between what the director or the company wants and what the designer has to create, because they speak a different language.
Absolutely.
So we had to be able to speak designer and speak and corporate and leadership. So it was like we did all the topics that you would normally do in a business degree with leadership and finance. For finance, they sat me next to someone else and said, just watch what he's doing.
The numbers.
No, the numbers was a disaster, but she was very kind. You have an accounting department when you have a company, so don't worry about that. Just watch what David's doing. But we had in theory, we had finance, legal, leadership, all of these kind of things. We also did a lot with marketing and branding, as you might imagine. Then we had more the art and design side of things, product development. So we did all different types of design and management together. But the difference I've noticed, particularly when I worked in large companies, that's when you really saw the difference, is that as a designer, you're always looking for problems and developing different solutions. So you're looking for all the inspiration outside, and how can you bring that to this new problem and create something new. So I was always very, this is a problem we haven't addressed. Let's create a solution for it. And
that's entrepreneurial.
Yeah, it's entrepreneurial. But it was, I think every leader I worked with, even from the small companies to the very large companies, I ended up reporting directly to every single CEO I've ever worked for, regardless of the size of the company. And it was only later that a few of them in different ways said, it's because you're the only person that ever says, we're trying to achieve this, but why aren't we doing this? We could do this over here, and this is how it could work, but I'm open to ideas. I'm like, brilliant. What do you need to make that work? And so I was able to get involved in some really interesting projects to really start new departments, new projects, new initiatives. So I guess it's entrepreneurial, you call it now. But at the time I just thought, well, wouldn't this be interesting to do this? And what if this would work? And then they were like, okay, do you need a budget for that? I'm like, okay, sure. You can give me money.
And this many people. We're going to need 3 years.
Yeah. And I think because I also had that understanding that there's no one way of doing anything.
Absolutely.
And I've seen people come out of business school with an MBA and they're like, well, this is the way it's done. I was like, well, why do you say that? What if we did this thing over there? And I'm like, and they're not necessarily naturally looking for other ideas and different ways to do it, because they've got the one way that works. So why not do that?
Default.
It's like, well, that sounds boring. So I was very good at engaging other people. So a few of the projects, like I did a leadership communication coaching initiative that I instigated in the bank, but I needed people to feel ownership of that. And for me to present this idea, but not say, this is what's happening. I've noticed this as a problem that, you've all now been given this, put on your balance scorecard, you have to do well with communication or you don't get your bonus.
Right.
I spoke to the CEO. I kind of said, I love this, but it doesn't feel very fair when no one's really been trained.
Yes.
So I had this idea to develop this training. I've seen it work elsewhere. We can bring it here with this coaching and a mastermind bolted into it so that you get that ongoing support. But you're the ones that would have to go through this. Would this fill any gaps you have? What's missing? Is the format what you want? You tell me what you want and I'll go and create it. And of course, they didn't have any other ideas, but they were like, oh yeah, that looks good. So then I had their buy-in and permission to go away and create this. And so then when I went back to them, one idea that they did come up with is like, well, we don't know how we're performing now. So we built in
benchmarking and
a benchmarking where their team reflected back where they were, they thought where they were, and we measured the two so they could see exactly what they needed to learn most. So that came from them, and I thought that was brilliant.
Absolutely.
So we designed that into it, but it was amazing, and I loved putting that forward. So it was just really, and the women's network came out of that as well. There's all these women who are so talented and no one's speaking up, that the environment isn't there to help them proceed. And I was like, what if we did this? And the CEO was like, I've noticed this too. What do you want to do it? And I was like,
let's bring the women together.
So I developed a little team. The CFO was my mentor for that project because he was a trailing spouse he gave up his job, followed his wife's career, just happened to get a brilliant job anyway. But, he was the opposite to what a lot of the men were. He was representative almost of the women's position a lot of the time. So he thought he would be a brilliant mentor for this project.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we had 2,000 francs. And honestly, in 2 years, we struggled to spend that money because so many people were supportive. We got incredible speakers who just gave up their time to support us. The local bar said, you can have our space. The local vineyard gave us wine. Oh my gosh, what can I do to spend this money? In the end, I bought a library. So I bought everyone in the community. We had certain books that everyone had, and then we had a library that they could borrow. That was the only way I could
spend the money.
Spend the money. Yeah. So so it's always been really interesting to spot those gaps and see how to fill those. And I think that's also a big opportunity for marketing.
It is.
And all of the smaller companies that I've worked with, what we've done with our marketing, so you don't, as a small company, you don't have a big team. It was me. I was the team.
In the small companies, second.
Yeah.
It's either you, the entrepreneur, or one person for like a day a week, or
Yeah, exactly. And so I had to do all the PR, all of the brochures, the website, the events, everything. So it had to be simple and it had to be impactful. So I had my design management degree. I then went and did a CIM postgraduate diploma in marketing, which is like the hardest, even now, the marketing qualification you can ever get, which is good. It's tough to get, but everything we were learning there was all about large corporate. They're talking about like change the playing field, and I was like, well, you can't do that as a small company. But what we could do is look at the gaps and the opportunities to show our clients what we represented, why we were different. We weren't just going to put on some kind of event just to get drunk. We were going to do something that they would really remember, and that only we could do as our brand and our company and things like that. So, and then, okay, how do we wrap this event into PR and everything else so that
talking about their product, their idea.
Yeah. So I was always looking at like repurposing and reusing different things and being really smart with what we were doing. So the budget was really low, but we had high impact. And there's 3 small companies I worked with that we built their brand really quickly. Now, I built their brand very quickly. And, they had a big impact in the market.
Yeah.
And the second company I did that for, unfortunately I left. It was like about a year after I left. They sold the company and it made everyone in the company millionaires. I was like, damn it.
Timing.
I left too soon.
Timing, sometimes.
But, it was fine. And, I was really chuffed with that. And the growth that they've had was enormous. But it was always, looking at marketing a bit differently to how I was ever taught. But I think the design management thinking was really the approach we took there.
But you're also using your real life experience, not just the school learning, because if you're going to, undergrad, master's degree, PhD, whatever, and you're stuck in that path, you're, like you said, with the business schools, you're limited to what is being taught to you in the schools. And the world is much bigger, basically, when you have a bit of real world experience. And I think that it helps. So there are different paths to get to the same outcome, basically, but it helps to have a bit of both in there. You get the perspective of the real life experience, what is actually taking for entrepreneurs to promote their services and to promote who they are and what they're doing, their services and their product. And then you understand exactly the triggers in terms of, marketing, in terms of leadership, in terms of branding, in terms of PR. So it's a blend of the two, but there's so much more behind that. There's the design thinking, there's the art affinity, at least that's creating this Melitta. And we're not there yet because this is the professional Melitta. But what are the small influences? What are the mentors? What are the people that kind of had massive impact that stayed with you. They could have been, they could have said something very small at one point, but it kind of set you in a particular direction.
Yeah, I talked about this recently on the show for International Women's Day. I shared some of the things that my mentors have shared with me that I noticed not many women get these messages. So it started with my dad, who really encouraged me that anytime a man tells me, "Oh, you can't do that," just think in your mind, well, that's not true. Because when I was younger, I went into his office and I met the guy that signs the banknotes. I think he's the chairman of the Bank of England, so he's the guy that signs the banknotes. So he said, one of the most powerful men in the country got on his knees to talk to you eye to eye. Don't forget that. Don't ever settle for anyone telling you what to do who doesn't show you that level of respect. You deserve that. And that really helped me, because a number of times, I'm sure you'll agree, you go into an office and say, "Oh, you can't do that because you're a girl." You have to think. And in the back of my mind is like, idiot.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, of course I can. Whereas I've met a lot of women in corporate, especially, who have heard that once too often and started to believe it.
We all do.
Yeah.
From very early on. So having somebody that actually says that to you, you're 8.
Yeah, I was 8 years old. And so that really helped. And he was a director as well, but we had a very close relationship when I was younger. And so I think that kind of leadership mentality and seeing, well, he's a leader, but he's also my dad and just very human, that stays with you as well. I think, when you see these other leaders, you're not intimidated by them, because you just think, well, he's just like my dad.
And my dad's giving me permission to be myself. And that helps.
Yeah, exactly. And
And
then the first company I worked with, my CEO there, he was very open to my ideas and really took time to listen to them. I developed my own job there because I was doing interior design projects, which I thought, oh, that sounds really exciting. When I actually did it, it was like, this is really boring. And I realized I am not good at project management. And then I remember one time, there's a whole block of flats. There were people ready to move in, and they didn't have any curtains because I just completely forgot to order the fabric. So it's not even like they hadn't been made, or the fabric wasn't even ordered. I was like, okay, you need to put me in a different job.
Yeah.
So, but they didn't have anyone doing marketing and branding, and that was really an area that I thought I could excel in. So I went and said, what if I did this? So I had to work part-time in sales and to support the team there before moving full-time into the marketing, communications, branding. But that was brilliant. And it was free reign. I could create what I wanted. And what I did there was I commissioned people to help, like someone to design the website for me. But I was like, I'm going to manage this. So
I know what I want.
Yeah.
I just need somebody to do it, right?
Well, no, he did it, but I wanted to sit there with him when he was doing to learn. And so I like, some agencies were like, no, that's not how we operate. It's like, okay, that's fine. Next. And then I found someone that said, sure, you can come and be an intern. So basically the company was paying me, but then I was interning so I could learn how this whole thing was developed. And the CEO thought that was a brilliant idea. So again, I'm not sure how many bosses would have said, sure, you disappear for a couple of weeks to work for someone else.
As an intern, take it on the job and come back, but you're bringing in all these skills. So I think he saw your vision. He was on board.
Yeah. And the fact that he said yes to a website, because this is back in 96. So
very early ages.
Exactly. Yeah. So early.
Completely HTML.
The sales department would go to the website, print off a page that they wanted, and they would fax it to the client.
Yeah, there was not that much, fiber or anything. It was still that sound when you connected.
Exactly. And they would say to a client, "Oh, you can go to our website," and they're like, "You what?"
Yeah.
No one knew what a website was, so they had to fax over these pages. I mean, a couple of years later, people were kind of starting to figure it out. So I think the CEO was quite chuffed to have we're the first company with a website. It's so early that no one even knows what it is or where to find it. But anyway, but that was a great experience, and I learned a lot from that, and I got a lot of permission from him. He really showed me that when you have ideas, you can share them, and people aren't going to laugh. people will take them seriously. And sometimes I went to him with an idea and we talked it through and we both agreed, oh no, that's rubbish. Let's not do that. But sometimes
it helps talking through with somebody. So you might think it's a phenomenal idea, but then you start talking about it, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe you're right. Maybe we should be doing that.
And sometimes as soon as you say it out loud, you're like, no, I'm just going back. But when there were some cases where I was convinced something would work and he was convinced it wouldn't. And in that situation, I think most bosses would say, so yeah, listen to me, don't do this. And maybe he knew me by that point that I would do it anyway. But he was like, go away and prove me wrong. So he gave me permission to try things out and to fail and to go back. And if it didn't work, we'd sit down and look at why it didn't work. He wouldn't just say, haha, I told you. He would like, well, why were you so convinced this would work? There's something in that maybe we can use in a different way. So yeah, that was
supportive.
Yeah.
And that's lucky. But not a lot of people, let alone not a lot of women, have these kinds of experiences in the workplace. But we don't necessarily have to have them in the workplace. But once we kind of hear these lessons, they kind of help now, wherever we're at in our careers. So that's the reason why I wanted you to mention those things, because I think it's important to hear these kinds of stories, and they're solid and they're grounding for all the people that are listening,
Yeah. So. Very often I have a conversation with someone and they'll tell me about this incredible idea that they have. And just yesterday, I had a call with this lady and she is like a real expert in what she does. She has this idea. It's something that doesn't exist in Switzerland yet. And it could really change a lot of things. But she was then like, well, do you think I can do this? Could this work? I was like, why are you asking me? You're the expert and you've got a clear vision. You've got the experience. You just do it. If it doesn't work, then you're going to learn so much through that process and you'll learn what does work. Yes. How can you serve this market? What does work here? But yeah, and so often people come on these calls wanting my permission or anybody's permission to do this when they don't need it. And we've called it, with one client, we retermed it expert ease. So instead of expertise, it's expert ease, just being at ease and confident that you are the expert. And this is a big mistake I see a lot of particularly service-based business owners, coaches, consultants, freelancers make, is that they will ask, like, go to their client and like, well, I could help you here, or maybe we could do this, or what do you think? It's like,
you're the expert.
You're the expert. Your client doesn't know how to work with you. They don't know how to get the best results. That's why they're coming to you. So you have to be the expert and say, okay, I've listened to you now. I understand that this is the problem. This is what's holding you back right now. These are the challenges and this is where you want to get to. Exactly. Is that right? Yes. Great. Well, this is what I propose. We do this, we get here, we do that, and then we'll get to where you want to get to. How does that sound to you? Do you have any questions? And usually they're like, oh, thank you. And I'm always, my favorite phrase, and I think I say it in every single client session, every single free session, is like, don't make them think. We hate to think. So if you ask a client to think about something, they'll go off and procrastinate and they're not going to think about it. So just tell them, this is what you want to do. This is how long it's going to take. This is what I need from you. This is what I'll deliver. This is the cost. What questions do you have? And
simple to the point, coming from a place of, I know what I'm doing and I know I can help you here. And I know you don't have this expertise in-house because I'm here to help you with that. So once those pieces kind of click in, there's more, the imposter syndrome goes away. You're not afraid of failure anymore because those two things are there. And even if you fail, it's okay. But because it's important to fail, right? But those couple of pieces help to just, I know what I'm doing, right? I'm here to help you, and I know I can help with this, and this is kind of how I think that we can do this. And
and quite often, the natural question, and like this lady had, well, how do I know it's going to work? Will this work? Will I make this work? And it reminds me of some advice, talking about off the wall mentors. My ski instructor, I was like, well, how do I know I'm not going to ski off the cliff? And he goes, you won't let yourself. And I don't know any woman who would knowingly let herself fail. She will do whatever it takes to make that project a success. Yeah. So I think we need to trust ourselves that, we're not going to ski off the cliff. We will do whatever it takes to stop yourself before that. And look back at your own past performance. I mean, how often do you really ski off that cliff? Very rarely.
Rarely, but and I think it's necessary though to ski off the cliff. I think it's necessary to fail.
Failing, yes.
Not to ski off the cliff. Do not ski off the cliff.
But I think you will make mistakes and you'll learn from them and you'll get stronger and better, but you won't have that massive catastrophe of like going off the cliff. You're not going to have such a big disaster that you'll be like exported out of your country, that no one's ever going to work with you ever again. It's never going to get to that stage. No. It's going to be little adjustments along the way more than anything.
And it will help, I think, strengthen your positioning because you have learned some lessons through that. So there's this fear of failure that's just like pervasive in business, especially as an entrepreneur. You're so afraid you're going to fail because it takes a lot of guts in a way to start your own thing, right? And probably that's what a lot of people you're coaching now, they're, can I do this? It's the permission, but it's also that fear of failure that's kind of right there. And it's just getting them started. And you were talking about vision, having the vision, you know what you want. You are very clear on what you want. You believe in it. It's there.
Yeah.
Walk the path.
Yeah. You won't have that vision. You won't have that idea. You won't have that clarity of how that idea could be in the real world if you couldn't make it happen. If this wasn't a possible path for you, it's just not possible. So, I've never imagined myself walking on the moon because that's just not, I have travel sickness, that's never going to be a possibility for me. Plus, I find journeys very boring. I like the destination, but, not astronaut material at all. So that's never been my vision because it's just not something I want. But the things we do visualize are things that we can do, that we can make happen. We just have to trust in that. And the way to build that trust and belief is to look at what we've done before. And this is another thing that I see. A lot of people start a business and they discount everything they've done before. And so where we live, it's Switzerland. We're in part of the expat community. And in that community, there's a lot of people who do things like English teaching. Right? So I've worked with quite a lot of teachers in the past, not just English teachers, but and they come to me and they're like, well, I have no marketing skills. I have no business skills. And I know that's complete rubbish because what's a lesson plan if it's not a business plan? It's the same thing. Your curriculum is your client journey.
There's the path.
And how you show up and deliver your lessons and adapt it to different people, that's your marketing. Teachers are masters at marketing. They know what people want and they know how to position messages in different ways to connect with different people and get a different result. So, teachers, you have everything. But I think it's very rare that I work with anyone that I need to teach any business skills to. It's just helping them to take what they already know and apply it in a different way with confidence. So it's wonderful going through that process because it's so quick. Within just a few weeks of working together, they're like, oh, well, I can do this. I know. And then it gets really exciting.
It's absolutely amazing what you do in the value whispering part. But before we even get there, because that's the shift in your business and how you're rebranding and all that stuff. But there's the first book, there's the second one that's in the making.
Yes.
But as you're writing the second book, as you're rebranding, how have you seen this interaction with coaching with clients? You work with women, you work with men, you work with everyone. Are there the same patterns sometimes that you see across the board? Are there differences? And where are they? Specifically, is there something that women need to pay attention more to, or is it more of a introvert human versus an extrovert human kind of pattern?
Yeah, I think the common element, there's two with my clients. And the first thing is they have this amazing idea and they know in their heart that they can make this happen. They have the skills. As I say, you wouldn't have this vision if you couldn't make it happen. But they lack the belief in it. So they lack that belief and they're waiting for permission. And those two things are holding them back, but they don't know that's what's holding them back. They think it's their lack of business skills, their lack of marketing skills, their lack of know-how, their lack of network. They're all of these things that they're missing. They're not really missing, as we just talked about. But it's their lack of belief because they haven't connected all of the incredible skills that they've got already to their ability to make a business work. So that's often the first part. And in the first week of working together, that's one thing that I get them to focus on. And it's amazing that, wow, I've just noticed that all of these jobs, that this is the thing that I love doing. And that wouldn't have happened the way it did if I didn't bring this. And that's exactly what I need for this business. Like, I know.
So you're seeing the light bulbs.
Yeah, so quickly, really, from the very first exercise. And so often people are like, I'm just seeing myself in a whole new way because they're appreciating their skills in a very new way that they've never looked at before.
It's a different perspective that you don't usually get. So you need somebody to be that mirror for you.
It is hard to do on your own, and not impossible, but very difficult. And so it's wonderful. But then sometimes there's a little tinge of regret because they realize if I'd really appreciated my value sooner, I could have already brought it for different things in my past. Yeah. But, you're always doing the best you can with the knowledge and resources you have in the moment. So you mustn't ever feel that way. It's all amazing. I can use this going forward to have more impact, but just don't look backwards. So there's that missing. And partly a lot of my audience are introverted, and that's kind of linked into it because as an introvert, and certainly my experience is, I was told you can't go on stage if you're an introvert, but people haven't quite realized that I am. But
it doesn't look it, but she is.
So you get all these messages that introverts can't lead, can't sell, can't market, can't go on stage,
and yet,
we absolutely can. And in fact, most actors, the big actors, a lot of them are introverted. That's what makes them so great. Most of the billionaires in the world are introverted. We can do anything. You just don't necessarily realize that a lot of the people you've assumed are extrovert aren't at all. So I think a lot of the introverts are looking for their way of doing business, and a lot of what's talked about and a lot of the sort of gurus out there aren't teaching business in a way that works for introverts. The way that they teach things is very overwhelming. You need all this new stuff. You need all this tech. You need all these things. Whereas I think for us, it's creating that connection is the important thing. Having that connection and an impact is what's most meaningful for us. And our whole lives we've been told it's not about that. It's about doing all of this other stuff. And this is our opportunity to create that environment where we can have a deep impact in a way that suits us. So a lot of my clients are introverted. I don't think many of them would necessarily describe themselves that way, but they're not looking for loud, flashy ways to do business. They're looking for impactful ways to do business. They really care about getting results.
It's also more meaningful if you're looking for impact more than for accolades. So accolades will come.
Yes, exactly. They want a business that matters, basically. Yeah. And the final thing is that they just can't communicate their value to their clients. And they really struggle. Well, what do I even say? And often they're jumping in too soon. What do I say on my website? What do I post on social media? How do I introduce myself at a networking event? But they don't identify their true value yet. Yeah. So once they understand that, then the whole way they present themselves changes. And it's really quite common for my clients, just 2 or 3 weeks into working together, that they start to get clients, they start to get investment, they start to get opportunities. I'm like, well, I haven't really done anything. I've just told them about my story and my passion for what I do, the bits that we've already worked on. And it's like, yeah.
But that's the mechanism that changes the whole person inside. And from that, everything outside changes too. So,
yeah.
And you're able to do that. I'm going to talk about our, one of first interactions. Melitta and I ended up in a conversation about what I do and my new project. And I ended up talking with you and talking about it for an hour. Just me explaining kind of the bits and pieces and how I was seeing the whole thing. And you were like, for an hour. You were like, and listening. And then like, okay, so let me give this back to you. And I still have goosebumps to this day. In 5 minutes, you've packaged it in such a way that it made sense. It was clear, and I saw exactly what I was trying to do, and I saw exactly the message I was trying to get. And it was wow, pretty much. So yeah, brilliant, like absolutely brilliant. So I'm glad that you're going to be focusing on that as well, because it's massive. This capacity to just see through the core of the thing and understand what the value added is in the product or in the offering, basically. And you've managed to do that so easily. Well, it's not easily, it's the experience and the talking to all of these entrepreneurs and being in the corporate world and not having all of the rounded experience that you do. But it's how do you actually do it? Because it's magic. It feels like magic. So
it's not magic.
I know. So wow, can you walk us? I know you're going to talk about this through the book and how to actually find the value, but a little glimpse into the book and a little glimpse into how you're building that.
Yeah. So I call it the magnetic messages matrix is what I produce for people. And I've done it on the podcast with Amber Roberts and Jenny Reed. You can Google them and you'll find those episodes, particularly the one with Amber. She's a boudoir photographer.
Ooh, yeah.
And she said, how do I talk about this without, it going into the kind of naughty aspect? How can I show how it's really empowering? And that was a message he was finding difficult. And so I was like, oh, can we do this process with you? And she was like, okay. So you can listen to me doing it live. And it's a case of, it's hard to do for yourself because you know everything that goes into that and why. But your audience, they just need to know, they need to understand where they are today. You need to speak to what their problem is today and then take them on a journey to, well, you may be feeling this, but actually this is how we solve it. This is the journey we're going to go on and this is the outcome. So in my mind, it's very logical and simple. So when people are talking, I'm just kind of taking out bits and I've got a little grid and I'm putting the information in the right places. And then I can see where the patterns are and then put it into this grid with 12 words and then pitch it back to you. So I love this process. It's so much fun.
It's mind-blowing. Really.
But
it's shockingly accurate. Like it just fits. Yeah.
But I think what has helped me to put that together is my entire background.
Clearly. That's why I was trying to bring us to that point where we're showing how did you get here? Because you don't just get to do this with coming out of school. We're not those kinds of magicians. I mean, there could be, sure, but it takes this rounded experience.
But it helps when the other person has done some work as well. So when I do this process with people who have gone through my program, so I think it's week 6 or 7, we have a one-to-one call and I do this for my clients. It's the point where we take everything they've done so far, they dump it on me, and then I sell it back to them as a pitch. And it's always like, wow, I want to buy that.
Yeah.
Because suddenly Yeah, they can see what it is that they're really selling, because it's hard to do that. You kind of get stuck with you can't see the wood for the trees.
The whole forest is in front of you, so it's difficult to see the treasure in the middle of it. So
yeah, but with my clients who have got to that stage, I can do that process in about 20 minutes. Sometimes it's an hour and a bit. But with people who haven't gone through this process, and it was easier with you because I think you are someone who knows marketing, communications, PR, psychology, all of this. But it takes me like 3 or 4 sessions sometimes to get them there, because there's so much that they're missing. And I was like, well, where's your client today? And sometimes they don't even have that clarity. So we have to do a bit of work there before they're ready to do this. So you kind of
there's tiny steps.
There's tiny steps along the way. So
it's easy. It's easy. She's taking you through tiny little steps that are achievable and doable for anybody.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is that with my clients, once they get to that stage, is what we were saying earlier. If I pitch someone their business, wow, it sounds great, but they won't necessarily connect and believe in that. They may think, well, that sounds nice, but is that really what I do? Can I really say this about myself? But when I pitch that back to my clients, they're like, yes. And then they just run with it. So I think that whole process of understanding your value is so important, because it feeds into everything else, and it is what helps you feel confident and feel aligned and authentic and genuine in what you're doing. And until you get to that point, I think any kind of self-promotion is really difficult.
Yeah, because again, you're seeing the forest. The treasure's there, but there's so many trees in the way, and you find a way to get the person to their treasure, and here it is. You're presenting it to them, and it's so much easier to speak from that place. And it doesn't matter if you're an introvert, extrovert, it does not matter, because once you're there, the message is so authentic and it's so grounded in what you're trying to do and who you are, that you can talk about that to anybody. So ease after that.
Yeah, and our mutual friend Damien Gauthier came on the podcast last November, and he made the point, and that when he's a speaker coach, he's a part of the TEDx team, and he's the curator, he's the boss, although he'd never call himself that. He said when he's working with an introvert on their message, he said they already self-edit.
For the stage, for being on stage.
Yeah. So they self-edit, so they don't give enough of the message for the audience to hear enough of the credibility piece. So he said he needs to draw that out. When he's working with an extrovert, they're like a fire hose. Everything comes out, but there's no prioritization. There's no kind of order. So the audience, in one case with introverts, they don't get enough message, and then they get so much message.
They don't know what to do with it.
They don't know what to do with it. So there is a case of like filtering them down around the message. So two sides of the same problem, and I think this matrix is great because it does help do both things. So you get that clarity going forward.
And for an extrovert, I think could be phenomenal, because once you can understand that, and you can actually talk about just that, you talk about that, and then if there's other opportunities, you can expand upon all of it. But starting with just that piece of that treasure makes it a lot easier for everybody to hear the message. So and it's on the other side, the introverts are happy with just a little bit. That kind of explains the whole vision. So I that part I understand. But how did you end up getting to the messaging matrix?
I think again, it comes back down to that design background. You're always looking for the different inspirations. Well, how can I apply that in a new way to have this different result? So it was very much that kind of process. So it's kind of that combination of the two models, then using the way I see messaging on top. And
there's the magic.
So that's end of part 1. Skip on over to continue the interview in part 2.